Hello, welcome back to Just for Today. I'm Jamal Normie.
Hey, I'm Miranda, the recovering addict.
And today we're going to talk about what to do when you're single. First thing though, we have a scripture.
Today's scripture comes from 1 Corinthians 7:8. But I say to the unmarried and widows that it is good for them if they remain as I.
Okay, that makes sense. But thinking about the subject, so what to do when you're single? I think part of a lot of issues within the world is because people jump into things or like levels. There's a way in which you should do things from here to here, and then because people are everywhere, mistakes happen, and then you just roll with those mistakes, right? Like people jump into relationships and get married because of physical, and things like that, and you have a kid, and then you divorce this person, and then now you have your kid, and you're carrying it to someone else's relationship. You have a kid with them, and then cycle repeat, right? And no one's learning, and it starts from how you're raised, and then you don't know any better. A lot of people don't even think about it, They just do what they feel. So getting into that, one of the first things I think is pretty important is health, mental health, physical health, all the healths, right? You need to be in a place mentally to be able to. And wait, first thing though, I'm not talking about necessarily getting into marriage. Like you could be single and be single forever, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you should be doing things to hold yourself accordingly. You never know. You can think that you're never going to be married. I didn't think I was ever going to be married, and then something happens, and then it happens. I never even thought that we would even be together. Like even when we were friends, I didn't think we'd be together, and here we are. So you never know what life could throw at you, what God has planned, and everything else. So we're not saying that you have to be married, but realistically, we're all made to be together, right? We're made to have a match, to have your other part of your soul or whatnot. We're puzzle pieces. Puzzle pieces are meant to be put together. And then puzzles stick together. They go together to form the perfect piece. They could be fine on their own, but together, one fills out certain places, the other one fills out the other places. One's good at some things that the other one's not good at. Like that's what a relationship is to me. You might not want to hear this, but you should be reading the Bible. You should be getting in the Bible, to be honest. That's kind of step one. If you're a parent, as a kid, you should be getting to learn this information. Even if you don't, let's say for some reason you don't believe in the Bible, just read up and read it. Pick it up and read it. There's so much in there that teaches you how to be a better person, at bare minimum, how to be a better person and how to treat one another. Like there's nothing, get rid of the politics side of things, get rid of all that. So to me, there's no negative to really learning about the Bible. Even if anytime you don't understand something, you should learn something more about it. If the Bible is a negative, sometimes how things are perceived is what the negative comes from. But anyway, so learn from the Bible. There's books in there, how to raise kids, how to live life, all this stuff, right? But back to what I was saying before, get healthy. Like work on your mind, work on your health, right? You don't want to bring into a relationship all sorts of baggage, right? You want to make it as easy as possible. Relationships are hard. Marriage is forever, and that's harder, right? That's forever. You don't want to bring a bunch of stuff into that relationship that you don't need to really bring into it. Marriage, relationship, whatever the case is. Work on your mental health and your physical health. Like work on the things that, find out what your negatives are. Work on those so that you know how to better yourself. Work on perceptions into things. Again, by reading the Bible, you get a lot of information out of that. Reading like Proverbs and Psalms and things like what other ones? Psalms is like the book of wisdom, so that's a really good one. So even us, like we got into this relationship and you're just getting out of your addiction. You don't want to. If you have some sort of issues, we need to work on them beforehand. So like you have to get rid of like things like pride and get the word control, like get that out of your head. Selfishness, like you have to work. Those are like some of like this fundamental reasons why people get divorced or have breakups and things like that. Like one side's thinking about themselves, or they think they're better than the other one, or whatever. Like marriage is about two sides of a coin. Like there's no one side without the other side. A relationship too, but a relationship should be leading up to a marriage. Like kids should not. The more that I think about it, like there's no reason why do kids in relationships? Like why should a kid be in a relationship?
Yeah.
Like a relationship is the precursor to marriage. Are you gonna get married when you're 18? Maybe, but not really. Like you don't know. A lot of minds haven't developed. Like my brain didn't even develop till my mid-20s. Like fully develop, like until early like mid-20s. 23, 24, 25, 26 in that area. So what you think you want when you're 18, you probably won't want. And even still, again, it's attraction. People want to be with somebody that they're attracted to. And I mean, that's important, but there's so much more to it than just that. And again, this sort of stuff's in the Bible to teach you this sort of thing. But you have to learn, you have to train yourself to get out of that mindset. But if you're raised on this and you're brought up in this, it's kind of easier. But this is the sort of stuff that we should be teaching our kids so that there's no issues. You get in a relationship, and what is that going to do? It's going to 90% of the time it's going to end up causing heartache. You're going to end up potentially having a kid that you don't want to have, or at the time it might seem like you want that kid, or even an accident, and that could be something good in the future possibly. But over most of the time, that's going to be something negative. You're going to bring that kid into another relationship, and then that's bringing baggage. Or, you're not going to be with that person more than likely if you're sitting up here trying to be in a relationship at 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, whatever the case is. So we need to have control over ourselves in that instance.
My thoughts about being single is just working on yourself, finding out what you want, or what you're willing and able to compromise and accept. There's no two perfect matches. So I just think, like, before you get into a relationship, during that dating period or whatnot, just do your best to get to know one another and communicate your goals, your wants, your desires, and your needs, and just get a feel for that person before you decide to make a full commitment, and not think, oh, well, this will change eventually or later on. Knowing the person that you're getting in a relationship with has kids, there's obvious, compromises that have to be put out there. I think that's just the number one issue with people who get into relationships, is not communicating and having different expectations, and then being too far into it that they end up fighting about it and then breaking up. It's not necessarily you regret having kids. You never regret the child. It's just, for me, for example, it's just the relationships didn't work out. I wasn't mentally healthy and whatnot. So, I don't know.
Yeah. But if you're following these steps, though, before you even get to that point, you shouldn't even... If we're teaching our kids the right way, none of this stuff would happen in the first place, because they would know better. You were never taught a lot of this stuff. I don't know exactly what you're taught, but you had a kid at a young age. Did your parents ever teach you about stuff like that? Not necessarily say don't do it, but teach you whys and future type stuff.
That's why it was okay for us to have boyfriends when we were really young.
Yeah.
And that's why it's hard for me, because I've never ever been single. The only time I've been single was I think when Isaac was little, just maybe for 2 years. And I wasn't, I've always had to have a relationship. Yeah. I don't want to say I'm codependent, but it's just, there's that codependency there. So I've never not been single.
Yeah.
And never, Yeah.
It's up to us. It's up to adults to break that cycle. But even before you're even thinking about even getting in a relationship, though, you have to be at a place. I mean, and they kind of tie into each other. So yeah, let's just say that you are preparing yourself to be. Realistically, we should be preparing to be in a relationship. You should be working on all these things. So yeah, I guess it does make sense. So again, with that selfishness, you have to learn to give also. Like, you can't always take. Like, when you're in a relationship, giving is the better policy. Like, if you can't get outside of yourself, how can you expect somebody else to do that for you? Like, in a relationship, you should be able to treat somebody else the way that you would expect to be treated. You just have to be able to step outside of yourself, learn to give. Really important, though. You got to learn how to commit. Marriage, it doesn't mean what it used to mean. It didn't mean anything to me before, really. Commitment is a big deal. Like, you can't, just because you get mad or upset or hurt, as if you're in dating somebody. Once you're married. Forever is a long time. So you have to teach yourself to, how to commit to somebody, how to commit to something, to things in general. Like, you can't just pick up a project, stop in the middle. Like, you got to get out of that mindset. Like, it's forever. People get married and then they get divorces. Like, divorce shouldn't even exist, because if you're getting a relationship with somebody, you're learning each other prior to getting married, you should be on the same page anyway. Like, you should learn all of these things. You should learn each other before you're even getting married, before you're even thinking about hooking up, having sex, or anything else. So that's like what
dating is for, right? Because like, it's hard for me to understand or like relate to, as in, if you've never been in a relationship before, you don't just like jump in, like you don't just go all in. Like, you want to experience different personalities and different, I guess is that what they call courting, right?
Courting,
where
dating.
You get to know that person, you just don't go full in. Because I don't know, previously it was hard for me to understand, like, okay, well, you just have to pick one person and then that's it, you're done for life, and then come to find out you don't get along. That's because like you jump in and you get into commitments and seriousness before those important conversations are had.
Yeah. Because again, people are seeing somebody they're attracted to, they're hanging out and they're doing the fun stuff, and in the first like year, of course, everything's going to seem exciting.
But they never talk about like serious. They don't talk about families and work and like goals and like how they see
because
things.
That's not even what you're thinking about. You're thinking about hooking up with this person. Next thing you know, you're living with the other person, or
well,
when
me and you started dating, like I never thought, because we weren't at that time going to church and like, going down that path. So we didn't have that conversation as to where I still struggle, the whole, God, man, wife, and then like the family and everything else. Like, that was a struggle for us because we never talked about that. Your tag is still hanging out.
We didn't. That's the point of what we're talking about, though.
Yeah.
Like, you need to learn the other person you're with. Like, I'm talking... It should be years before you're even thinking about marriage, like getting to know each other, seeing what the other person's like. Definitely shouldn't be weeks. Definitely shouldn't be a month.
At the same time, like like you'd have to live with someone for a year to fully understand what it's going to be like to live with someone. Like, and if you're doing the proper way to where you don't sleep in the same room with someone until you're married, like how does that work?
Why do you need to live with somebody?
Because it's a different. If you just know a person outside of a home, you behave differently. There's like you behave differently versus once you're in the same home, you become more comfortable and you see a person how they really like. I've never seen them in their pajamas before, or how do they behave, whatever it is. Like there's a different side to everyone because that's your home. You don't present yourself to the outside world the way you do, like as if you were in your own home,
No, that's what questions are for. I mean, you should have a roommate. You should get a roommate, understand what it's like living with somebody in general. So that's one side of things. But the other side of things, is questions. These sort of things you should be able to talk about and everything else. And that's not true what you're saying also, because people, after you know somebody over time, and especially in a dating sort of situation, eventually they're going to start letting down some of these things and acting more and more like themselves versus that fake person.
Once you move in together,
No.
there's things that I know like that have changed and that have come about with me and you once we've moved in together. You know, that there's things that you didn't know about me until we were with each other 24 hours a day, like all day, every day.
There's that level of things, but if you know somebody's core, you should have a pretty good idea.
Like, how am I supposed to know you snore? Like, how am I supposed to know
again,
I'm
that's
going
a question.
to need earplugs? What do you mean?
What do you mean? What do I mean? That's a question.
So when you're dating someone, when you're courting someone, like, how is that supposed to come up? Like, you don't even know you snore.
I do know I snore. I could 100%.
You deny it.
I don't deny. I'm saying it right now. How am I? So I'm not denying.
That's the first time you ever admit
You're lying.
it. But it's things like that, like
it's things like that you ask. If you're a person, you know you're a light sleeper and you can't be around someone snoring, you ask them, do you snore? Eventually, we're talking about after the first year or whatever, and things like that. That's a question you can ask. So like, what else? What else?
I don't know.
Anything that
there's just certain habits, like how, you know, just in general, like
I think,
when it comes to like cooking, or, you know, as in like, I didn't know how anal you were about someone being in the kitchen when you cook. I'm not going to know that or experience that until we're actually living together.
You're right. What does that do on the marriage, though?
No, as in there's certain characteristics and habits that, like, you know, you may not want to be around. And you won't find out until you're actually, like, you know, living together and already fully committed, you know?
No, because you should know yourself and you should know what sort of stuff you should ask. And if you're...
How am I supposed to say? I don't know. There's just certain things that, like, I would never have thought to ask. Like, so is anybody allowed to be around you when you're cooking in the kitchen? Like, I would never even think about that.
So, but that's not marriage related. Like, what would that change in a marriage?
Like, there's just certain habits that, I mean, I don't know, I guess it wouldn't change, but there's just certain things that I'd rather know before I go full in.
I agree. So if it's something that you would need to know, like rather know, like that would cause, you know, an issue for the 90% of it. I mean, there's always going to be those random small things that somebody can do, but you should know that to be able to ask. You know what your pet peeves are.
No, I didn't know that was a pet peeve of mine until that happened.
So again, this is why I'm saying you have to train your mind.
Because I don't want to ask. Like, it's whether it's an embarrassing question or...
So again, if you're dating somebody for a couple of years, you should be comfortable enough to ask anything.
Years, like, that's a long time.
It is a long time, but again, you wouldn't have kids. You wouldn't have kids the wrong way. You wouldn't have half the issues that you're having issues with if you would have done it the right way. Everything that we're considering baggage, if you would have done it the right way, you wouldn't have.
Like even so, like my past relationships and whatnot, like that's made me who I am.
It is.
So
I'm not talking about regrets. I'm saying the stuff that is considered baggage would not be in effect had you been brought up differently.
I don't know.
I don't have kids. I've never done drugs and all this stuff because I was brought up completely different the way you were.
Right.
I was brought up differently. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying wrong. You can go through the worst thing. You went through your recovery that made you the person you are today. But, so I'm going to get a little bit nerdy here. But, so this timeline, right? Everybody in the world is messed up and is going through all this crap, and the whole reason for you to have to go through something, me to go through something, is so that we can teach somebody else, right? That's the whole reason, right? Now, another timeline, everybody was doing everything, you know, a better way and living the best life without having to have these issues of baggage and everything else. What would be the point of you having to go through something negative to be who you are now? You could be the person that didn't have to do that didn't do drugs, that X, Y, and Z, and had a happy life without having to go through that. This made you are today, which it's beneficial because we can teach somebody something. If there's nobody to teach anything, why do you need to go through something negative?
Right.
So that's what I'm saying. You don't. And we shouldn't just want to go through stuff. Like you shouldn't have just wanted to have done drugs, for those amount of years, majority of your life. It happened. You are who you are today, and we're able to teach somebody. So there's something positive out of it. But that was, there's nothing good necessarily. There's something good came out of it, but there's nothing that's great about the fact that you could have died. You know what I mean? And everything else.
Right.
So that's kind of the point of what I'm relaying to. You are the person you are today. I'm glad you're the person you are today. It got us together because of all the stuff that happened. But if you could have avoided having these issues, I think that would have been the better case. In the perfect world. The world's not perfect though, so.
No.
So, but yeah, so ideally dating for years would be great. We're humans, that doesn't happen. It's hard and blah, blah, blah. And people have feelings and all this kind of stuff. But ideally, that's the way it should be. And you should only be dating in order to get to that point. It's tricky. Dating's tricky because we're humans and we want, and the more time you spend around somebody, the more you're going to want to do whatever and things like that. So it's hard. And you're not going to know how to ask everything, but you can ask everything that you can ask before you're together. There's still going to be things going to get through. That's what marriage, that's what it is though. That's what marriage is. Some of those, all that stuff should be smaller things. Like, what your pet peeves are. But if you don't, then there's something wrong with you.
You may not know it's a pet peeve until you're.
No, you should know what your pet peeves are. I knew every pet peeve I had before. I know.
Many moments later.
Mm-hmm. That would affect you until you're in the situation.
List should be pretty small is what I'm saying. I'm not saying that's impossible. I'm saying that list should be small. If you've dated correctly and you've talked, you've asked your questions, you haven't been too abashed or like afraid to ask these questions.
And they're like me. I would be so bashful that I wouldn't ask any of those.
After a couple of years, you would be fine.
My whole thing is I don't think you should be dating for a couple of years.
So then what? You're supposed to just date and mess up? You should get married and hope for the best?
No. I'm just saying that not everything can be put out on the table during the dating period. Things come out and people change. Even when you get in a relationship, come in a relationship, and even when you're married, like, you evolve together, and certain things would come about that, like, you develop habits. You might develop a habit that, your other person didn't know that it would bother them until it did.
That's like 9 steps ahead though. You're right, you do evolve together. You become one and you learn each other even more, and you do develop things based on the other person. But that's the marriage part of it. This is why marriage isn't easy. That's not habits that you shouldn't have been aware of. Things will change slightly. That's why marriage is hard. It's forever. People are evolving. That's the whole point. But that's not what I'm talking about. So realistically, that is a long time. I agree. Everyone's going to have a list, and then there's going to be other things, but there's things that are not going to happen until you're living with each other, of course. And this is like 90%. Like, there's that 10% of things that you're not going to think of or whatever. But for the most part, you should be fairly versed in the other person by the time that you're married. And you should be training yourself to be better at things within a home, right? Like, a lot of guys, girls too, a lot of people are, whether you're lazy, whether you don't know how to cook, whether you don't know how to clean, whether you don't know how to whatever, like, you should be able to maintain a house by yourself. Like, you should learn to be able to maintain a house by yourself. You should be able to change lights or understand, how power and everything works, billing, understand, how to clean your clothes, wash dishes, how to cook. Like, you never know what the other person's going to be like, but you should be able to comfortably find an overlap between you and your spouse. If you're trained correctly, there shouldn't be I don't know how to do that, so you know what I mean. Of course, there's things that are preferable that a man should do, and things that are preferable that a girl should do, whatever. Or we're all equals realistically, so we should be able to do whatever either way. But you should be well versed in home. You're wanting to build a home with each other and everything else. You should be versed in what it means to be an adult and what it means to have a home. Like, you can't be sloppy Susan, leaving stuff everywhere, just being messy all the time. And you can't be lazy Larry, that's just, you sleep all the time and you don't want to help out and do anything. Like, that goes into health and everything else. But you should be working on being better, so that you don't want to bring any issues to a marriage. Marriage, again, is so long, and the reason why it's so hard is because people have issues when they're bringing into it. You should learn finances. Like, you should have an idea of what you want to be, where you want to go, your job, your goals are set, or you're in a position that you want to be in. You're not going to work doing this 9 to 5 that you hate all the time. You should have goals and working towards something or be there. Like, we all are stuck in these 9 to 5s, whatever the heck it is. You go to work, you spend most of your time at this job, you're there all the time, all day. You come home and you get angry at work, then you come home and you're angry. Over time, that's going to have its toll on any relationship. So we need to set goals, work on those, work on finances, understanding finance. Like, you never really learned about money until church and everything else. Like, you never knew, like, you didn't have a bank account. You didn't like banks in general, which I don't like banks still. But in order for this, in this society, we have to understand how to utilize money. You don't want to go into with a bunch of credit cards and that sort of thing. Understand finances in general. All right, well, that's all the time we have just for today. Leave us a comment below. What did you think about all this? What's your idea on being single? What is that to you? What are your goals? But anyway, like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, do all the things, but most importantly, remember to keep coming back.
Stay clean.
Bye.
Unique New York. Unique New York. Unique New York. Unique New York.
How many you got?
How many do you have?
I just asked you first. Why are you shedding?
Is it 1 Corinthians? Is it 1 Corinthians?
Mm-hmm.
It's from 1 Corinthians 7:8. But it wasn't that. Be right on my nose. Self to the Lord. Like, you just stay, commit, and be as God is.
Just people, like, there's, what is the word I'm looking for? God has planned. You just gotta.
I can't see myself.
Cause you got your glasses on.
I have my glasses on.
Oh.
I can't see.
That's not the point. The point is just to know that it's tracking.
Okay.
So vain.
I am.
1.
And that's getting into his face too.
Get your foot off of the tripod. 3. Go. Go, go, go. Go sit down. Nobody else can feel, right? I think that my words are not coming out. Oh my gosh. He's shaking. Get off the tripod.